So I've been rewatching The Flash recently, and every time I finish a season, I rank all the episodes of that season in a video. I did that for seasons 1, 2, and 3, and now that I'm finished season 4, I'll be ranking all of the episodes of this season. This season is probably the most hated season of The Flash. I don't think it's terrible at all, but I do think it's definitely nowhere near the best season of The Flash, even though it does have some very good episodes, but at the same time, it does have some bad episodes, and I'll talk about all of those in this video. So in this video, I'll be ranking all 23 episodes of The Flash Season 5, giving them each very short reviews, and by the end of the review, you'll see the score I give to that episode. So with that in mind, let's begin with the worst episode of the season and the worst episode of the show.
Your eye! Have we heard from the guys yet?
What did you just do? I swing got peanuts from a bar.
Now this episode is terrible. It's so bad. It feels like it comes straight out of Supergirl Season 1, as it's really, it feels like it's written by the same people. All the girl power, the blatant hashtag feminism, I mean, it's so much. It's like throughout the episode, it's so out of place for this show. The show has never done anything like that. It really fits. It really feels like it's from Supergirl, but not even that. I have a lot more problems with the episode, like the fact that Felicity is in it. I mean, go figure that Felicity's in the worst episode of The Flash ever, but the fact that Felicity went to the Bachelorette party, that Oliver wasn't invited to the bachelor party or he didn't go, that's kind of ridiculous to me because Iris and Felicity were never friends, but Barry and Oliver definitely were. Maybe even on top of all of that, Amanda Black is the worst villain The Flash has ever seen, and maybe the worst character. She's so annoying, she's terrible, the actress is so terrible, and the writing for the character is god-awful. So overall, Girls' Night Out is the worst The Flash has ever given us, and it really feels like it comes out of not only Supergirl, but the worst season of that show.
We need your help.
No killing. There was no stipulation. Fine, it is time consuming to remove blood from metal.
While this episode doesn't have the hashtag feminism that episode 5 has, it does have one thing that episode 5 has, and it even does it more annoyingly, and that's Amanda Black. Everything about her is just so infuriating. The way she smiles, the way she talks, the writing for the character, the acting from the actress, it's all so aggravating, and the fact that Team Flash teams up with her in this episode, it all just doesn't work at all. It's so annoying. But on top of that, this episode also has the Council of Harrisons, which is kind of entertaining, but also so damn stupid. So this episode is, I think, one of the worst episodes of this season, and one of the worst episodes of this show.
I'll take it from here.
It's my turn to do what you've been doing.
Alright, a monitor from here then. Other monitor. Wow, that's super annoying.
An episode where Iris becomes the Flash temporarily could not have come at a worse time. I think if it happened in seasons 1, 2, 3, or 5, that maybe would have been good, but the fact that it happened specifically in season 4, where Iris was at her peak annoyance, really the only season where I disliked her as a character, that didn't help things at all. On top of that, this episode, aside from introducing one of the bus metas, which is really just a villain of the week that they kind of integrated into the season-long storyline, aside from that, this episode is completely filler, and that, again, doesn't help things at all. This episode is stupid, the concept is not well executed, and it came at a very poor timing where Iris was already really annoying.
Like Charlie Bucket.
I swear up. Alright, where is she?
Look and fly, Flash! Ralph, I know what I'm doing. He's gonna fall to his death.
Episode 17 does have one thing going for it, and that's a storyline with Barry and Ralph, which is technically the main storyline, but it isn't really the whole main storyline, as there is also a villain, Null, who kind of sucks, but Ralph explaining why he's always joking around, that definitely was not bad at all, and I think the acting from Hartley Sawyer was pretty good, as it is for the most part in this season, but it's, again, mainly the villain Null, and also the storyline with Cisco and Breacher that I really didn't like. The storyline with Cisco and Breacher was really aggravating, because Cisco not telling Breacher that the main problem is just, it's so out of character, maybe not for Cisco himself, but just for human beings. It's just not something a normal human being would do, and I always like Cisco. He's a great character, one of the best characters in the Arrowverse, but in this specific episode, I really didn't like him because of all of that. So episode 17 is certainly one of the worst episodes of this season, and also probably near the bottom of all the episodes of the show.
Guys, the suit's freaking out!
Get it off!
I can't get it off!
What the hell does he need a grass for, Cisco?
He runs on water. It seemed like a smart idea at the time.
This episode, I think, visually looks pretty good, and that's just really the case for most of the season, but that's really the main thing this episode has going for it. The visuals and the focus on the new costume, which the new costume is my favorite costume in the entirety of the Arrowverse, or at least at this point it is, and I think this episode just focusing on it definitely helps it, but the fact that Kilgore is such a bad villain, and the fact that the couples therapy between Barry and Iris is very difficult to watch, like, it's really difficult to get through, it wasn't necessary at all, should not have been there, makes this episode pretty mediocre.
No! If Becky keeps winning, bad luck will keep spreading.
How much worse can it get? Maybe we should burn some sage.
This episode, I think, is a little better than episode 2 because the villain, Becky Sharp, is a lot better than Kilgore. Not great, but still a lot better. But this episode still suffers from a lot of things, like the main storyline of the episode not really having any weight or value. It mostly feels like a Villain of the Week episode, and the only reason it isn't is because of a couple of reveals here or there, like the fact that Cecile is pregnant, or with Wally West leaving the show, which Wally leaving the show is definitely more of a minus than it is a plus. And again, it's not the show's decision for him to leave. The actor did want to leave. I'm still gonna kind of hold it against the show, as Wally's departure from The Flash kind of came out of nowhere and definitely, I think, was not written well at all. And while I do think that him joining the Legends did work, I do think he should never have left The Flash, and if he did, he should definitely have come back. So that was definitely not a great thing for this episode either. But you know, what you gonna do? The actor wanted to leave.
When you squish, it squishes.
Pushes into something but ugly.
You have the makings of a hero. Wear that or fight crime naked. Don't fight crime naked.
The Council of Wells is definitely when the show took the concept of there being an infinite amount of Welleses just way too far, as it didn't really serve any purpose aside from being comedy. It was funny, and that is it. And honestly, while it was funny, I don't think that was enough to hold up this episode in the slightest. And while the storyline with Barry and Ralph was pretty good, the main villain of that storyline, the gender-bent Black Bison, was not very good at all. So this episode, it's okay. It's definitely not bad, definitely not good. It's, I think, just okay. And at this point on the list.
Yes, now we know what her power is! What? I cannot believe I'm about to say this, but I think you just made me like country music.
This episode is mostly fine. I mean, it comes at a point of the season that I really couldn't take the main villain seriously, and episodes that didn't focus on the main villain were fine, but this episode definitely did focus on the main villain, and the fact that she was played, and I say she because it's played by an actress at this point, by the actress who played Becky Sharp, I just couldn't take her seriously at all. That was really weird that they did that. They really should not have done that, I don't think, and this episode doesn't help it at all, and I also think that the forced emotion between Ralph and the Fiddler didn't really work. Maybe if they introduced her a couple episodes earlier, maybe if they introduced some sort of romance between Ralph and the Fiddler a couple episodes earlier, and then she died in this episode, maybe it could have worked, but the fact they introduced her and then she died in the same episode, the emotion there, I don't think it worked for this episode, and this episode just came at a point that I just couldn't take the villain seriously, and this episode did focus on the villain.
Come on, let's move.
Is he safe?
Oh, he couldn't be more safe. Barry's completely unharmed. You can rest easy. He's in good hands.
I did like the storyline with Barry in prison, and while this is certainly, I think, the worst of the episodes of Barry in prison, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad, because I don't think it's bad, I think it's just okay. This episode does take place during the DeVoe in Another Body series arc, and because of that, because it focuses on DeVoe quite a lot, I just couldn't take him seriously. On top of that, this episode does have Amita Black. It also focuses on some bus metas, who are mostly terrible. They're mostly bad characters, but for some reason, I enjoyed this episode a lot more than I expected to, so this episode I think is not bad at all.
I think we got bigger problems.
You okay, guys?
We're 2 inches tall, Caitlin!
Yeah, I'm like Cisco size now.
Look what you did.
You still don't know I get this height.
You guys are going in the hamster cage.
The storyline with Cisco and Ralph being shrunk by Dwarf Star was very stupid, and it wasn't very good, but the storyline with Barry in prison, that was actually really good, with Big Sur, a character who was kind of friends with Henry Allen, or owed Henry Allen one, so he held Barry. I think it was in the last episode before this one, but I really liked the storyline with Big Sur, and I think that while the actual storyline with the Dwarf Star wasn't very good, I think it paid off quite a lot when Barry ran Big Sur all the way to, I think it was China, which is where he wanted to go out of prison. That was a great, very satisfying moment, making this episode at least a little better than the next one, and not the worst prison storyline episode of the season. And again, there's only 3 of them, so, you know, it's the second best as well.
Them on the true path.
Clifford, the plan is to save them.
We can't save everyone, my love.
This episode focuses on 2 major relationships and 2 major breakups, one with Cisco and Gypsy, another one with Clifford and Marlise. I think the one with Cisco and Gypsy was actually very well written and well acted. I don't know why they broke up, probably because the actress wanted to leave and we haven't seen her since, but if that was the case, I think the writers and the actors did a great job at just executing that. It was a very well done breakup, and I think with Marlise and Clifford, that breakup was good as well, but I think that the flashbacks with Marlise and Clifford showing Marlise's origin story was not very believable. The way she just switched from being all for technology to completely against it, I just didn't believe that switch, so that was a huge problem for this episode. But overall, definitely nowhere near the worst episode of the season, and overall I would think that it's pretty okay, and almost I would say it's good.
Having the ability to help someone that's a greater life. To rise up. Rise above that fear.
Episode 11 was a pretty good origin story for the Elongated Man, showing him getting his costume, showing him getting his superhero name, and just becoming a fearless hero, and I really liked that. I thought the Trickster and Prank were pretty good villains, nothing amazing or anything, but definitely pretty good, and I liked the storyline quite a lot with the Elongated Man being scared of going out as a hero, and then talking to Barry and how that led to the final showdown between the Elongated Man and the Trickster. That I thought was pretty good. I really liked Ralph in this season. I really like the Elongated Man in the season a lot more than it seems a lot of people do, so this episode definitely came at a good point in the season, and I think that it worked very well at finally giving Ralph his costume and his superhero name.
If you hurt him, if you put a hand on it!
His body may be human.
DeVoe!
His brain
DeVoe!
is smarter than yours.
DeVoe!
The Flash.
The mid-season finale of Season 4 is nowhere near the best mid-season finale of The Flash. It's certainly good, but it's definitely got a lot of problems, namely the fact that Amina Black is in it, and she definitely brings down every episode she's in. Also the fact that, while at the time it seemed like maybe a cool twist that the Thinker got his new body with a Brainstorm, it really ended up ruining a large portion of the season. But other than that, I mean, the showdown between the Flash and the Thinker was really cool, and a lot of this episode was very good. I think that visually this episode is top-notch, and overall definitely a good episode.
What's around you?
You're in my mind now. There's no escape.
Barry.
He's to be punished.
Run, Mr. Allen. Run.
The season finale is certainly not, I don't think, a great season finale, and the fact that it has the score that it has means that it is definitely a little bit underwhelming for a season finale. I didn't like the fact that the Thinker and the Flash's final battle was in his mind, and the Thinker never used his powers, and it was just the Flash running out of his mind with the Elongated Man. Now, bringing the Elongated Man back, that was definitely very satisfying. That was pretty cool. Also, the ending with the reveal of Nora West Allen debuting in the episode, or revealing herself in the episode, that was definitely a great cliffhanger at the time. And this episode overall, I think it's good. I think it has a lot of great moments, and I think it is fun, but it certainly is not as good as a season finale should be.
The question is, what are you willing to do for yours?
Your Honor, there's something you need to know that will alter the outcome of this case.
I have no idea what you think you're doing.
What my husband won't.
The trial of the Flash, I thought, was a very good episode. The episode obviously surrounded the trial of, not the Flash, Barry Allen. They called it the trial of the Flash because that's the name of a storyline in the comics where the Flash killed Reverse Flash, and then he was put on trial for that. This is different, but I think they handled it very well for the actual storyline of the season, and I think it was great. I think that the acting in the episode is actually really good from a lot of the actors. I think the visuals in this episode are really good, and also I really like the contrast between the judge condemning Barry Allen and David Singh thanking the Flash. I thought that was awesome, and how also Barry Allen went into the same cell that Henry Allen was in. A lot of this episode had some great moments, so I thought that it definitely deserved to be in the top 10.
And I'll be reciting every prayer that Cecile's ever taught me.
How much time do we have left?
Not enough.
If he explodes, it could destroy the entire city.
Following the supposed death of Ralph Dibny, this episode follows mainly the remorse of Barry Allen and how he feels guilty for his death, and I thought that part of it was handled very well. And I remember back when the first time I watched it, it was actually very emotional. In the rewatch, it wasn't as emotional, but I do think that it still very much worked. I do think Citizen Cold and Siren X were shoehorned into the episode, and I don't think they necessarily needed to be in them, but it was fun, it was fine. I think that it worked out for the best in the end, and Fury Rogue is a pretty good episode.
No one has to die.
Iris, Caitlin, Cisco, Joe, Harry. DeLoach cannot have them.
This episode is really, really good. It's got a lot of great action moments, a lot of great emotional moments, like the death of Ralph Dibny, which I never believed for him to really die because of the fact that they just introduced this new superhero, the Elongated Man. There's no way they're going to kill him off, and despite this, it still managed to be a little bit emotional, especially because of Barry's reaction, and I thought they handled that very well. But this episode also feels like the climax of the season, a lot more than any other episode of the season, and because of that, I think that it just makes it a lot better, and this episode is really good overall. My main problem with the episode is the fact that Barry, and especially Iris, keep on lecturing Ralph about the fact that he should never kill the villain, even though Barry has killed villains like Atom Smasher and San Demon, 2 episodes in a row, and also Iris a lot more recently killed Savitar, like, not that long ago, so that's kind of hypocritical. Maybe it's a character flaw, that's fine, but they never addressed that character flaw, so it's kind of just them being hypocritical. But overall, this episode has some great acting, like between Hartley Sawyer and Grant Gustin. I always thought they played well off each other, and that's also the case in this episode, so this is definitely a very good episode.
Hail victory!
They want someone to bow to worship, to lead. What you're doing is not leading, it's ruling.
Ready! Aim! Kill them all!
Crisis on Earth X is definitely not my favorite crossover. I think that it's bloated with a lot of unnecessary things. This episode also has a lot of unnecessary moments, like all the scenes with Iris and Felicity are very difficult to watch, but aside from that, it's definitely very good. I would say this might be the best part of the crossover, as the action is amazing, like with the Ray and the Flash fighting Red Tornado, and not just the action, but also there's a lot of intense moments, like the moments that they're about to be killed in the death pit. That was pretty cool, and in the end when Martin Stein is shot. But overall, Crisis on Earth X is definitely not my favorite crossover, and because of that, it doesn't really make it into the top 5 of the season.
This guy's no joke. He said he wants to fight the Flash. I made you a new suit. You want to take it for a spin?
I don't really know why, but I really like this episode. This episode is not very highly rated on IMDb. It's definitely not a beloved episode of The Flash, but I really like it. I think that it's just a very good, feel-good episode. It's got a very good structure to it, and how it all leads to the ending with The Flash returning in his new suit, which all visually looks very cool. I don't really know why, in spite of the fact that this episode's not exactly a loved episode, and it's got a pretty low rating on IMDb. I really like it, and it manages to make it to the top 5 of this list.
You don't see what's going on.
Calm down. Don't want you to do anything else you'll regret.
You broke into our home.
Please, we are getting married in a week, Barry.
I'll be thinking of you.
This episode is one of the better DeVoe episodes of the season, as the rivalry between Barry and Clifford in this episode is really, really good. I don't love how Team Flash doesn't believe that Barry thinks that Clifford DeVoe is a villain. They don't believe that he's a criminal, which I feel like everything they've gone through, they probably should. But other than that, this episode is really intense. It's really well written and really well acted, so I really like it.
You're dirty now. Probably has a long list of people that want to toss him off rooftops.
4 years seeing this stuff, I finally puked.
Elongated Journey into Night is such a great, fun episode. I think it's such an amazing introduction to the character of Ralph Dibny. Just based off this episode, the actor does such a great job. Like in the scene where he's just pouring his heart out and explaining himself about what he did, why he did what he did. I think it's a great introduction to the past between Ralph Dibny and Barry Allen. And overall, I thought it was such a great introduction episode to Ralph Dibny. The Breacher storyline I don't love, and this episode definitely isn't amazing, I would say, but it's still one of the best episodes of this season, as it's just so much fun, and Ralph Dibny, I thought, in this episode was great.
You're not ready to use flash time.
What are you willing to do for the world?
We deserve to make the choice to be a hero.
And God said, let there be light.
Now, this episode is the actual peak Clifford DeVoe, and I think that this episode is what the rest of the season should have been, because this episode pulls off everything that the rest of the season doesn't really. Like, the rivalry between Barry and DeVoe in this episode is so good, like in the scene where they're just arguing after Barry destroys the satellite. Not to mention the actual scene he does destroy the satellite is visually really, really good, and also not to mention the opening scene where DeVoe just goes all out with his abilities. Also, like the scenes where Barry and Cisco are arguing, this episode is just chock full with so many great moments and great scenes that I couldn't help but really, really like it. It's not amazing or anything. I think the actual storyline of the episode isn't perfect, hence the fact that it doesn't really have that high of a rating, but it is still, I think, the best episode of this season, except for one.
I don't know how much longer I can hold out. Iris, what? I don't know what to do. I can't save this.
Contrasting Enter Flash time with the rest of the season is kind of mind-boggling, as it is so much better. It's like it's written and shot and created by completely different people, and to some extent acted by completely different people, as this episode, compared to the rest of the season, it feels like it's a completely different production. This episode visually is incredible. I think it's the best episode of the Arrowverse ever in terms of the visuals. It looks amazing, and I'm so glad that happened in this season specifically, because this is the only season he has the Season 4 suit, which I think is practically perfect. I think in Season 6 probably could have been great as well, as that suit looks great, but this suit, I think, really elevated this episode to a point that maybe no other season could have accomplished. But yeah, the visuals are amazing. The acting in this episode is really good, from Grant Gustin, John Wesley Shipp, Tom Cavanaugh, and somehow, someway, Violet Bean, who I always thought in this show was kind of a mediocre actress, but this episode proved that she's not at all. She really, really got a lot better, and the scenes between Jesse Quick and Harry Wells in this episode, with the music in the background, are very emotional. I mean, it kind of comes out of nowhere, the whole storyline with Harry Wells and his dead wife, but that really hits a chord. It's definitely very emotional, and that's only one part of the episode that works as well as it does, as the structure of the episode is so cinematic and I think so perfect, with all the speedsters and the rest of Team Flash trying time and time again to get rid of the nuke and failing, and that all leading up to Barry going to Iris, which people do complain that Iris was the character to actually come up with the idea of getting rid of the nuke using the Speed Force, but honestly, in the structure of the episode, it works perfectly, and in what the characters know, especially in the moments that they are conscious, I think honestly there was no other way they could have done it, so I think that was perfect. And then when he runs to the Speed Force, the music that plays in the background is amazing, the visuals are incredible, and it just works so well in the structure of the episode, as this feels like the ending of a movie where the character finally figures out the solution to the problem, and it's so damn satisfying. I also think that this episode captured the feeling of the Flash's powers, captured how awesome they can be, as like kind of similar to that episode of Justice League Unlimited where Wally ran around the Earth a couple times and beat Lex Luthor / Brainiac. That was such an awesome moment that I think the show never really recaptured how awesome that was until this episode, as the moment where he runs through the Speed Force, he feels so powerful, the episode feels so amazing that I think they really recaptured that moment and recaptured the magic of the Flash and super speed. So this is definitely my favorite episode of the season, and it's not even close, but it's also my favorite episode of the show, and it's basically tied for my favorite episode of the Arrowverse ever. So that is it for this ranking. This video is fairly long, but I did talk about the worst and best episodes of this show for quite a long time, so that might be why. But anyway, let me know in the comments down below what your maybe top 5 best episodes and top 5 worst episodes of this season were, and if you can, just rank all the episodes in the comments. If you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.